to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining us for our April TPA membership meeting. We're happy to have you here this morning. We've got a pretty packed agenda and a lot of great topics to cover for today, so I'm going to kick us off. We are recording the session as we typically do, so any materials that we share throughout the course of the meeting today, either we'll share it through chat, and if you miss it in the chat, don't worry about it. We'll get it out in an email to everybody as a follow-up to the meeting today, including a link to the recorded session. We'll be using the Q&A and the chat today, so if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put those in the Q&A and in the chat function. And I think I'll move right into our first topic. So for those who are not yet aware, the 12th Annual Disability and Mental Health Summit hosted by Representative Dan Miller is very quickly approaching. So that event will be Thursday, May 8th. It will be at the CCAC Allegheny campus. There's been some confusion out there about whether it's in the the North campus or the Allegheny campus. So it is the Allegheny campus on the North Shore of Pittsburgh, right near Heinz Field. I'll post a link here in just a minute to the registration. A lot of great happenings for that day, including this year we're going to be hosting an assistive technology fair from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Right outside the auditorium. So if you haven't yet registered, we encourage everybody to register and attend. It's going to be a great event for this year, so we're looking forward to that. And also we have our conference coming up in July, which will be here before we know it. We're really excited about the lineup so far. We want to extend a special thanks to all of those exhibitors and sponsors who have stepped up this year. We've had an incredible response. We have a few spaces left, so we'll be putting out a message later, sort of mid next week. So if you're still interested in exhibiting or sponsoring the event, please respond to that message, and we're really looking forward to a super event this July. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Patrick to take it from here.
Thank you, Craig, and welcome everyone. Thank you for being with us today. And Craig, just on the heels of your comments, I'll just briefly, you can leave the slide up, but I just want to briefly comment on the summit and really acknowledge the work, obviously, of Representative Dan Miller, running for judge, leading the General Assembly, still continuing to do the work with the Disability Summit. And I also want to thank and acknowledge Nancy Murray, who's been really active. Nancy chairs our Government Advocacy Committee, and she's been really active with Louise Larkin in Representative Miller's office, a lot of the planning, a lot of the coordination. We know a lot of you have signed up as well for the Disability Summit. And I want to also thank Craig, as he mentioned, with the Assistive Technology Fair, which is something new that Representative Miller wanted to add this year. He reached out for people that could help support this. He knew it was an important issue. And Craig has really stepped up to do a great job introducing resources. So a lot of this is very new. We do not know what things are really going to look like at the Disability Summit this year. New venue, but very exciting. And we are likewise going to once again do our IDA Legislative Awareness and Appreciation Luncheon. We will not be hosting any session or program content this year as we've done in the past few years, I believe. But we do encourage everybody to invite your legislator. The invitation process has largely been done through and by Representative Dan Miller as far as reaching out to his colleagues in the General Assembly. But I did send a memo to all the General Assembly members this past week. Craig, we'll see if we can share that, if not today, but I want to confirm with David Caligiuri that those did go out. I think it'd be something if you are going to reach out to your own legislator. We have some information today that we'll go over during the meeting. If a copy of the invitation letter was helpful, we just want you to have as many resources as you can. So we will probably just post that then to the website on the ACT page. So David Caligiuri, I see you have joined us, and I know you have a limited amount of time. So I'm going to thank you for jumping out of what you're doing. I don't know exactly where you are, but I appreciate you jumping on. So I promised you I'd give you 5 minutes. So I was just about to get into some budget topics. So Craig, if you could just advance next slide. And then one of the places I'm going to go here very soon is to really talk about our unified advocacy in Pennsylvania. I am going to talk about some top line things that involve federal government, a lot of the disruption going on. But David, you and the firm had invited us to attend some meetings this past week, both with
Hmm.
Senator Kim Ward and Senator Joe Pittman. So leadership in
Yes.
both chambers of our General Assembly, people that we've gotten to know over the years, and I think we've been able to make an impression upon. So I really wanted to just bring you in for your perspective. First of all, to thank you for hosting those meetings, an opportunity to really sit down in a boardroom with, I don't know, David, a dozen people and really
Correct.
interact over lunch. So, there were a lot of takeaways for me, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of talk about that. Interesting to me, the way both Senator Ward, Senator Pittman, work within their chambers, seem to have a relationship certainly with the administration, a lot of dialogue, a lot of discussion about what's happening with federal directives, things going on locally, Nippon Steel, Homer City, Power Grid, things that really have a large impact. And then demographics, what's really happening to population here. So I just was interested in your takeaway. Certainly, we want to get down to our topics, the IDA advocacy and some things. But I thought they were both very interesting meetings and sessions, very different. Good to get perspective from both. But I did feel as though, again, many thanks to you, that we have the opportunity to really sit down with them, practically one-on-one. In fact, with Senator Pittman, I had the chance to really to sit with him and just chat with him a little bit before we even got started. So what were your takeaways, David? And what would you like to share with us?
Well, sure. I first off, thanks for having me this morning. I appreciate it, Patrick. I will just say, it's getting near budget season in Harrisburg, and so from our perspective here with TPA, we got to pay attention to what the budget, how the budget plays out. The state is required by law to pass a budget by June 30th, and we have a little more than 2 months, which sounds like a lot of time, but when you're working with a legislature with 253 members, it becomes really difficult. And there's always a lot of last minute deals and trade-offs. And so I think what we need to do as TPA is to stay vigilant and to keep the foot on the gas, keep our outreach with members of the General Assembly, those that, if we're in their district, reach out, try to set up meetings, get families out there to talk to members of the General Assembly and tell them how important it is to preserve the money that is currently been allocated for the IDA community. And we'll be hypersensitive to what's going on up in Harrisburg, making sure that we're not left out of the budget. And it's going to be a process. There's two schools of thought right now in Harrisburg about this budget. One is that it's going to be a bare bones budget that passes on time, which is June 30th, and sort of everything is status quo, which will work for us. Then there's another theory that this budget will go late into the summer, if not in the fall, and you're going to have a number of issues such as skill games and adult use marijuana that'll be legal to sort of add to the general coffers of Pennsylvania's bank account, right? So in that scenario, there'll be a lot of horse trading. And again, it'll be up to us to pay attention to what's going on, keep the foot on the gas, like I said before, and see if we can't increase some of the revenue that's been allocated for the IDA community. And also if we can't get through the index legislation. Yeah. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there really is. And your colleague, partner, Nello Giorgetti was here with us last month. We talked a little bit about this top line number. And I think for the budget process, typically we would look at this as a year where we're just flying below the radar. We don't really have initiative money. There's no rate money. But this does indeed, there is money for annualization of current programs. So we're being mindful of that. So I think, David, one of my takeaways also was in both sessions, there was discussion about the federal budget being a driving force, which of course it is. But I guess my takeaway was, even without that, this is certainly not a budget that is ready-made to go. The impression that I had from both Senator Ward and Pittman was that there's a lot to dispute really within what the governor has proposed in his spending plan. You mentioned a couple of things that are in there as potential revenue sources. So the gaming, the recreational marijuana use. So timeline on those very different. It seems like
Yes.
from both Senator Ward and Senator Pittman's perspective, the gaming money is something that could be real in the upcoming fiscal year. They're not looking to see anything in terms of infusion into the economy as a result of marijuana use, recreational use. So those are some downstream things. But
Yeah.
my sense was this is, there's a pretty big gap now, state budget wise. So I sort of felt varying perspectives in terms of deadline between the two senators, which was interesting. But we know that oftentimes this budget does indeed go past its constitutionally required June 30th deadline. I suppose there's the chance for sure that depending upon where things are with the federal government, for our world, federal match will be a huge piece of that. And that could be something that ordinarily, even in the proposed budget, it's pretty direct, immediate as to what the federal matching rate is. And that could be a swing of tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, even if there are deep cuts to Medicaid. So I'll go back to my original point, which was it really appears that it's not as though there aren't wide gaps just in the Pennsylvania portion of the budget. So some things there. Do you want to highlight anything that really are the more controversial pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's controversial at this point. I mean, there are a lot of gaps and there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's really, we're sort of waiting to see how things play out at the federal level. It has a huge amount of influence over our state budget, and in particularly the IDA community and how we're funded. So, I hate to say that there's so much uncertainty and we're not sure where things are right now, but we don't know where things sit, and the next 2 months will be very telling. So, well, Dave, I guess stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned for hopefully more detailed budget updates.
Yeah, we will certainly turn to you for those. We know we have a lot of active members participate very actively. Thank you. Members are always welcome to continue to do that. I just did mention, I think right before you jumped on, David, we had a letter going out to all the General Assembly members to come to Representative Dan Miller's Disability Summit. Yep. So do want to catch up with you. Confirmation. We're not handling the RSVPs, as I know you know, David, but we want to get a copy of the letter posted to our site so our members can do outreach to their individual state senators and representatives to make an invite, extend an invite to them to come to Representative Miller's summit. So hopefully we get some state legislators there on May the 8th. We know that Representative Miller will again have legislative panel discussions. He always extends invitations to the entire General Assembly, and they get to treat this as a hearing. So I guess technically speaking, they can have their travel reimbursed and it really counts as a meeting. So there's some incentive for folks to do that. So we will see in this political environment how many state senators and representatives. We know we will have at least a few of RSVP. Again, TPA will provide lunches for them, but we really want them to just enjoy the summit. Go out and see a lot of you as members who plan to exhibit at the resource fair, meet people. Feel free to just bring everybody in your world too. So thanks again, David. I'll give you the last word on anything you want to wrap up with.
No, you've touched on everything. Just everyone, reach out to your legislators, get them to the summit, and keep in touch with them as the budget process plays out.
Okay.
We'll talk next month. Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, again, I want to extend our thanks from TPA to C&G Strategies, David's firm. A lot of great people work there, not just in the Pittsburgh region where David is from. They have a Harrisburg office. And again, their ability to get leadership in from the PA Senate, really an important matter. Senate, obviously very important ultimately, and people in leadership will really ultimately determine what gets into the budget. So there are higher level, more controversial items, but we have to be very aware and cognizant of what's happening in PA. So we'll continue to provide you with the best information we can. So to kind of get back to really some things that I wanted to just cover, top level themes as far as some opening remarks as we get rolling with today's program. Elections are something that we obviously know make a big difference. We've mentioned Representative Miller. We know that the Health and Human Services Secretary Kennedy, had made some comments about autism just yesterday. I saw that Representative Miller sort of provided some clarification and some pushback on some of those comments. But the people that are in leadership right now at the federal government are put there because they have been elected into office. And for this administration, we are now faced with a situation where there are individual votes that really do matter. And as you've heard David and I just discuss, votes within the Pennsylvania General Assembly will be very important in terms of what passes. And something that we'll talk about at the federal level, while there's a lot of disruption at the federal level, we know that votes matter. And I'm going to get to this a little bit later, but within the PA congressional delegation, meaning federal Congress, there are key votes in Pennsylvania that can make a difference. And if you go back to the previous Trump administration, I reminded myself that it was Senator John McCain who had really cast a deciding vote on the future of the Affordable Care Act at that time. So we're really being urged to look at that level. That will determine cuts to Medicaid. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about thematically a little bit today as we kind of go through some of the information that we're going to share. I do want to also talk a little bit today about the unified advocacy. So again, and I said this at our last meeting, this has been a little more formalized since the March meeting, where we have, and we will share with you today, some information that all of the associations have jointly put together that address our budget advocacy, that address the legislative agenda that we are supporting for the IDA community, and which also address some things that we are directing toward the administration. I'll say probably most notably Kristen Ahrens as the Deputy Secretary, to look at some efficiencies that we think can and should provide some relief immediately to the IDA community. And those are the exact things that we want to target. So when I thought about what else, that really doesn't mean to me, what else are we looking at? Federal drivers, state, performance-based contracting, many new announcements, including performance-based contracting for supports coordination. Also, we're still very recent in terms of a new bulletin on room and board guidance. So there's a lot happening, but there's also a lot that are in control of individual providers. So to just look at everything from a policy and budget perspective, we always want to remind members that there's a lot that you can do individually. We had some discussion at last month's meeting about some parents who are struggling to find services for their children after graduation. I was contacted just a couple of days ago, so that's something else that I'm going to revisit. But just a reminder that we all have the power as individual organizations to look at services that are available, look at gaps between what people really need and those services, and the ability to be creative and work with each other, other partners, the state as well, in terms of how we can really bridge some of those gaps. So let's get on with some of the actual content that we want to cover in today's meeting. If you can go next slide, Craig. I want to get into, and we've covered a lot of this already, so we are going to talk a little bit about federal budget. I've already mentioned the Anchor advocacy. We are partnering, of course, with Anchor. We have many organizations in our advocacy movement across Pennsylvania that are Anchor members organizationally. We know we have many individual TPA members who are Anchor members and get that information. And of course, Anchor is a great resource for us into things that we share each and every week with TPA members. So we'll talk a little bit about the unified advocacy, as I've mentioned, some of the materials that are going to be at your disposal to use when you talk with not just your legislators, but within your organizations, with your staff and your boards and your families and the people who you serve, to really have some clarity on what the associations are advocating for in a universal way. So there are some very recent announcements and news from ODP. The ISAC was just held earlier this week. I mentioned the room and board bulletin, the release of information and comment period for performance-based contracting for supports coordination, another big topic item for discussion. So also today, I want to kind of pivot to some different areas. So Eric Lindy is going to join us from Step by Step. Eric just having really organized and sponsored a great DSP appreciation event in the Pittsburgh area. From that, Amy Hewitt was one of the keynote speakers. Amy graciously agreed to stay and participate in one of the TPA HR committee meetings. So we have Denise Kavanaugh, who attended that in person at Emmaus, where they were gracious enough to host that meeting, and Amy. So we want to talk about that a little bit. And a little bit later, to close the meeting, we want to introduce a liability insurance captive option for TPA members. So I'll briefly state that if you've been with TPA for any amount of time, you know that we've had things in the past, the Purchasing Edge. We have tried to engage in purchasing organizations to help save members money. And I will say that those models recently had not really produced any meaningful savings or benefit to members. So we want to introduce something today. We are going to ask for your feedback in terms of whether you have an interest level in it. And if so, we will schedule a dedicated meeting for those of you who are interested. But please Do vote either way about your interest level. Please offer any questions throughout today's session as we kind of get into exploring what might be beneficial, useful for you individually as members. So we'll get into some of the added items. If you can go next slide, please, Craig. We'll go into some things in a little more detail. This really just underscores the importance of the vote. When you look at some of the thing that I want to give Craig the due credit for doing all the research. There's a lot of news out there. And when you get the In Case You Missed It every Monday from TPA, that's really curated from a lot of different content. What's highlighted there is really the vote, the 216 to 214 vote that got the reconciliation bill through, at least at this stage, at the federal level. That is why it is so critically important that the people in Congress, in both the House and the Senate, and I think what we'll talk about a little bit later is the initiative of Anchor to contact those individual senators and representatives. But it could come down to a single vote. This is why voting does continue to matter. And the thing that we certainly don't want to see occur is that legislators in Congress don't really have a full understanding of what cuts to Medicaid mean for individuals. So we'll show this link to you a little bit later. I think we're going to release it on Monday. It is active now, so to the extent we can drop the link in when we get to that slide and allow you to start to promote it and use it. It really is equally important in this environment that we not only advocate to our own state legislators, but we make fully aware people serving us in U.S. Congress that these cuts to Medicaid will have a very important impact. And it could literally come down to one Republican vote in the House in terms of deep cuts to Medicaid and all of the impact around that, whether that occurs or not. So this is something that we wanted to use to call that out. If you can go next slide, Craig. One of the things that actually, I have a regular meeting with Kristen Ahrens, our deputy. We also spoke a little bit this past Tuesday at the Isaac meeting. And when I last spoke with Kristen, it was last week, I believe it was on Friday, the release of this OMB, Office of Management and Budget document, unauthorized release, 64 pages, I believe it was, picked up by the Washington Post. So Kristen directly was very aware of this, very aware of the impact just the news of cuts would have. So this is just something really for the content around where some of this information is coming from, why it even is more heightened. And some of the things, and Craig, I did not pull this from In Case You Missed It, but I know you had previously been looking at things with demonstration projects. Some of the things the administration is cutting that really do have an impact. I was at the Isaac. Isaac is comprised of family members, providers, supports coordination, individuals. And there were a lot of fear and concern about some of these programs that maybe have not affected your organization yet. The concern over some of these cuts and some of these leaked potential cuts may have direct input on folks that are receiving some form of service now, whether it be some demonstration project. The administration has been very vocal. They're not going to continue to do that for states. But Craig, if I can ask you to jump in just with some of the research on some of the, I'll refer to them as the 1115C waiver, some of the things that states, including Pennsylvania, receive. I know you've looked into this a little bit, and I just want to make sure that I'm providing clear and complete information.
Sure. So this was an announcement that came out from Anchor maybe last week. And they're really looking at, there was some signals that there were some demonstration waivers under the 1115 that the federal government is looking at cutting right now. They don't believe that there's going to be sort of a direct impact. They think that this sort of is a distraction from the core functions of Medicaid services, but I think the community has kind of seen this as a signal of what may be to come. So again, we covered that in the April 20th update. So if you guys want to go back to that, you'll get a high level of what's going on out there.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And you hang on for the next slide too. So this is really where I know we have something in the queue that this is really directly from Anchor. So Anchor reached out really to its Pennsylvania contingency. So that includes TPA, PAR, and RCPA, who are Anchor members, organizational members, association members of Anchor. And they've asked us to do outreach, to communicate this to our members. So here as well, Craig, Yeah, I know we talked right before the meeting. This link is active. A lot of this has been active at Anchor. They've been on this now really for months, ever since the original announcements of the new administration. So this is going out Monday, Craig. And what are we asking members to do here?
Yeah, so part of what we're looking for is we really want Anchor is looking to get representative from every district in Pennsylvania in the House and in the Senate. And as part of their campaign, they've identified several PA representatives where we haven't seen a good, strong showing from um, either TPA members or people who live in that district on the Save Medicaid campaign. So the call to action right now is anybody who's living in these districts that we would appreciate it if you could share this with your organizations, reach out to these representatives, let them know how important Medicaid is by using the Action Center, and we'll provide a few other resources that if you wanted to make a visit, you could sort of take a handout for the hashtag Save Medicaid campaign. So yeah, so we really want to target in this area. And this
Yeah,
just as an update, this will go out on Monday.
and certainly no harm if you don't happen to know, and I don't know that I would know or many of you would know, but to just get this out broadly. The link is, from being familiar maybe with some of our campaigns as well as Anchor's campaigns, it will identify, it will send it to the right person for you. So if you happen to just broadly disseminate this, again, this is something I think that can be useful. Anchor's resources are great to communicate, again, with everybody in your own local community, everybody that supports your organization, all of your stakeholders, and your business partners, your bank. Everybody really needs to be kind of aware of and invested in the impact that this could have. So we encourage you to really support this type of information broadly. And don't worry about doing a lot of research. We will provide some more guidance on that. But at the same time, it certainly does not hurt for you to encourage us to go to this link even now and send a letter. I think it's always most helpful if you're able to tell the personal story about the person or people that would be most impacted by this, exactly what they rely upon, so that our lawmakers really understand the true personal human impact to these types of cuts that really just begin with there's too many dollars going here and there. And unfortunately, a lot of this becomes political chatter back and forth. So these are real lives being affected by this. So we just want to help Anchor, our partners across the state, and each of you get this message out effectively. And this is one great way to do that. So we now will turn to something, again, that is somewhat new. We've talked about conceptually what we've been doing for, I guess it's been the last couple of months now. We continue to work with all of our partners across the state who you see listed at the bottom of this infographic. This is a little bit of a mashup just to get it onto slides, but over this slide and the next slide, you'll see all of the content. I'm sure, Craig, you can drop a link if you haven't already. This is posted on our ACT page of our website, so you can download the PDF of this handout. This is something that you can use, again, talking to everybody throughout your organization, your staff and your board and your legislators when you get the chance to meet with them. And this is really what these 6 associations have collaborated to develop to sort of formulate what are we looking to do in this 2025 year. That is not to say that this is not subject to change over time. Obviously, we expect new information coming from the federal government about the types of cuts that Craig just described and alluded to, what's going to happen with the budget, what truly indeed will be the cut or impact to Medicaid, and who will that affect. But we wanted to get into exactly the call to action. So this slide really just shows the associations, what we've done, our unified advocacy. And at the end of this, we also kind of put the call to action. What can you do? Tell your story, reach out to your legislators. And with that, I'll go to the next slide and we'll just talk a little bit about this content. This may be new to you, so that's not a problem if you're hearing this for the first time. I will emphasize it is consistently where we've been over the last couple of months. Ever since the February announcement of the budget, we were, of course, advocating, if you go back into last fall, to increase the rates up to the level that the actuarial analysis ordered by Governor Shapiro had determined last year. So through last year's budget process, we did not receive the amount of funding that was anticipated. Actually, rates were published at a higher rate. And through the process, you heard David Caligiuri describe a little bit earlier, some of that funding was lost, and that directly impacted the fee schedule rates that support financially all the services that each of you provide. So once the February budget was released and announced and the governor commented on it, we knew that there was no new rate money. There was no increase to rates that everybody was going to be able to see and realize right away. But the annualization of services does produce increase. There's also backfilling of ARPA money and other changes that happen between the federal and state government. So the state calculates this and they determine a number. There is indeed $10 million for early intervention supports. So we want to protect both the annualization of current services, people who did come in off of the waiting list, people who came into the system with more complex needs, more costly needs than maybe people who left the system. So there's $175 million to support that, $10 million to support the early intervention. So we do want to lock in and make sure that you're in a position to know this. Ordinarily, this probably would not be at risk, as we talked at our meeting in March when we had David's partner Nello talking with us. This is something we've agreed upon at the association level. We can't ignore and be complacent that a legislator and people in leadership, more importantly at the end when they're deciding where to cut the budget, would not take some of this money. And although that would not directly affect what you bill for your services, it's money that we would much rather see stay in the system, be used to support people, to expand the system, to build capacity, than to lose it and have to fight to get it back. So that is priority one. Priority two is gaining bipartisan support for the annual market index legislation in Pennsylvania House and Senate. We do now have Senate Bill 617, which is a bipartisan bill, which is, I think, again, another breakthrough in the advocacy to have annual adjustments to our fee schedule rates. So very rewarding to see all associations now rallying around this concept and around this specific legislation. Priority three is really getting at some things that we hope the secretary, the deputy secretary can address directly. We've talked about some things in terms of the aggregation of billing rates where it comes to continuous units and CPS. We've talked about relief on licensing. Some of the things that you will read if you haven't already, even in the release of supports coordination, performance-based contracting, really speak directly to simplification and streamlining. I think we're not always having the same conversation, however, that ODP is having when they make certain comments about what will provide relief. So I think you can rely upon your associations, and I also ask you to communicate with your associations on what is most important to you. We've identified things that we have all heard about from you, but as this goes forward, what we hope to happen is to have a dialogue with our Deputy Secretary, Kristen Ahrens, about what can we really accomplish in the near future that does indeed provide you with some relief. So questions about that, let us know, write to us. This will be an ongoing initiative that the associations have taken on, will continue. We expect throughout this year, but we will see where each of these items takes us. And I would expect there to be some modification certainly along the way. We do expect new information on every single one of these going forward. So next slide, please, Craig. One of the things that I wanted to address head on from this past Tuesday, I think it was, I know Craig has already released a lot of information from the Isaac Hub, a lot of information there that I invite you to take a look at when you have a moment. ODP has been very transparent about what's discussed at these meetings, the types of materials and the handouts that they provide and that they comment on and that Kristen herself does comment on. One of the things that I believe has created a great deal of confusion within, I won't just say the provider community, the IDA community at large, has been since the multi-year growth strategy announced by the governor. And again, I haven't used that term, I don't believe, so far today, but that is really what the governor has articulated going back to last year when he increased rates, increasing the number of waivers. Several thousand waivers were added so that people could come off the waiting list. And specifically targeted through the multi-year growth strategy has been the emergency adult waiting list. So there's been a delay in the release of waiting list figures. The associations have been having an ongoing dialogue among ourselves. We've been all communicating with Kristen and the department. We know that other stakeholder groups have been doing this as well. So the PA waiting list campaign has a website. Their information had become dated, waiting on ODP to come out with some of their updated statistics. So I'm happy to report that I think we are there in terms of what will happen going forward. This is a slide that Kristen actually corrected because there was just a formatting error on the slide. So when they put the information out, this is corrected. The numbers did not change, by the way. The numbers, however, will change as they sort of vet through people that are on the waiting list that perhaps have moved out of state. There's some other reasons that they will footnote as to making adjustments, but that will affect people on this list in the hundreds, maybe, not the thousands. For a certain amount of time, we were only seeing the adult numbers. And the last time that TPA jointly published a waiting list figure was January after the compensation study. And we were using a top line number for the waiting list in Pennsylvania for ID services of 12,411. And we were seeing numbers that were more in the 7,000 range. And of course, asking, as I know many of you were asking, well, what happened to the rest of the list? So this is the complete list. I think if you compare the number that I just cited, 12,411 to 11,711, clearly of those thousands of waivers issued, people were enrolled in those waivers. We have received reports that we know there are some delays, there are some issues. We certainly know there are continuing issues with capacity that gets directly at the heart of some of the things that you experience in providing services as provider organizations. But I think going forward, Kristen has committed they will publish this data routinely. This will be the format they publish it in. And when you look at the top left quadrant, emergency adult, that is really the multi-year growth strategy target to eliminate over 21 people on the emergency waiting list. So while we expect some recategorization, we think going forward there will be clarity. I think that helps all of us in our advocacy to be clear on exactly what the target is. And I do commend the administration for putting this out there in a way that they can be held accountable as to whether or not their policies are really immediately affecting that particular goal. So we did want to call that out. Again, however, a lot of information, a lot of discussion about 14C exemption if that affects you. So we invite you to take a look at those materials and reach out to us if you have any questions. So the next thing that we want to get into is really the announcement just recently came out. Craig, I want to say that was Friday. I know it was recent, but ODP announcement 25041 open for public comment. These are the performance standards, the new waiver requirements that are being submitted for by the state to move supports coordination from its current state into performance-based contracting. That will again involve a selective contracting waiver. So there is a lot of information out there. We've just sort of selected a few of the things that are top line. Craig, I think, covered this already in case you missed it on Monday. So a few things that I'll just briefly go over. Effective January 1st, 2026, for the most part, I think we can say that selective contracting, performance-based contracting for residential will really get up and going in earnest July 1st of 2025 with tier assignments for providers from the current submissions that ODP is now reviewing. So supports coordination is a little bit behind that. There will be primary and select tiers only. This is all explained in an implementation document. So if you go to the bulletin, if you go to the announcement, there are links that will take you to the places where you can see this information in detail. There are waiver amendments that affect not just performance-based contracting. So there are some other new amendments. And I want to pause here for a moment and go back to you, Craig, because one of the things embedded in there is the assistive technology cap that I know other members, have been working on for a long time for a change in the lifetime cap for assistive technology. So Craig, I wanted to give you a moment here to comment on that.
Yeah, we were really excited to see this. So for those who aren't aware, TPA had a pretty strong presence in the ODP Technology Task Force for strategic funding or strategic partnerships and funding. One of the recommendations we made last year was around eliminating or adjusting the lifetime cap for assistive technology for a variety of reasons, including just the nature of how quickly technology is changing. A $10,000 lifetime max just seemed sort of over the top. So we were really happy to see that for the consolidated waiver, they replaced the $10,000 lifetime cap with a $3,000 annual limit. But most importantly, they still are permitting variances. So if you have a really expensive piece of technology that is needed for a person to live their best independent life, that is still able to be considered. So there were a few other changes around the community living and PFDS waiver They basically removed the cap and they now include it in the annual waiver limits. And then there is a generator limit that is 5,000. There's still a $5,000 lifetime cap, and it really can't be increased by the variance. But these are just a couple of the highlights of some of the non-performance-based contracting waiver amendments. We were particularly excited about the technology changes. So really encourage people to submit comments on this. I think it's important for the department to just hear, where we're at in terms of kind of moving forward with some of these additional items beyond performance-based contracting.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And I want to circle back to something you said. We were active as TPA. In fact, we had a technology committee at one time or work group, and we really just decided to fold it in with the technology task force work. So the work that we did, of course, non-TPA members, organizations from across the state, not just providers. I chaired it for a while. Craig took it over from there. Thankfully, gratefully, because Craig is doing a lot at his organization as Chief Technology Officer. So I think we've really seen a lot of growth and support. Encourage you to really, as Craig said, comment, please share with us your thoughts and ideas. TPA will certainly issue a comment letter. As you see at the bottom of this, comments are due May 26th. Again, how to submit comments. There will be some listening sessions, some webinars scheduled. Please take a look at the calendar on our website on any Mondays in case you missed it for things upcoming. We still have a lot of great things upcoming even in this month, but a lot of this really important information. And then Craig, I'll keep you here for a second. Just the pay for performance up to 3%, 3% of, I believe it's 24, 25 revenue. So there is going to be an element of, I believe it is just the select tiers can qualify for this. It's a movement from 15-minute units to case rates. That's going to be a monumental change in terms of how some of this is funded, which is a direction ODP clearly wanted to go. Also, there is a nod to rate setting methodology that I want to call out. They do cite in here, if you take the time to read, that they're using rate setting methodology, which they cite the need to look at certain components in rate development. I don't know that we ever really saw any of that, but this kind of relates to some of you as residential providers who have appealed your rates, our continuing advocacy around that. Those are the regulations, those are the requirements. While we would like to see an annual adjustment calculated on something different, this is currently regulation, and clearly ODP has positioned, maybe out of having no other choice, it is regulation right now. It is binding upon them. But there are some things about rates. There is a fee schedule. So we invite you to take a look at that, share your comments with us. We will incorporate anything. And if you have questions as well about anything, please keep in touch with us through the website or the information email account. Craig, anything there that you wanted to call out from researching the announcement and some of the attachments?
No, I don't think so. There's going to be some public comment, a couple opportunities coming up where you can register to do that with ODP. So we'll get those dates for you. I think there'll be a reminder of that coming out shortly. So I think it's next week, but we'll keep an eye out for that.
Okay, thanks, Craig. And then just briefly, I just won't spend a lot of time on the next slide, but still of fairly recent vintage is the ODP bulletin on room and board. We know there were trainings on this. The recorded training sessions are available on my ODP. I'm sure we have a link on our site. So please watch those if you are unfamiliar with this. It's a lengthy bulletin. There are some procedural changes. This is a compliance matter. Again, we always want to make sure that members are informed. So I think this may go back a couple of weeks in terms of the updates we provided to members on the mailing list. But this stuff is out there. Very important that you become knowledgeable and aware. And again, please reach out to us with any questions. So the next thing that I want to get into is really a follow-up from discussion we had last month with Michelle O'Toole. I had some outreach, being aware that there were a group of families that were looking for some new innovations. And I would say that, having said that, these are just sort of basic sort of supports. And this is just an excerpt from an email that I may have mentioned earlier in this meeting that I received from a parent advocate. And as you can read through this, I won't read it for you, but obviously, the system has changed a lot over time. And there was a time when thousands of people were in state centers, and the state and even federal government could make policy decisions about, well, we just need to move folks from here to there. Let's authorize group homes. Let's move people out of congregate living settings. The challenge today is many family members and individuals leaving school are not having needs met. So I raise this again today because it's a call out really to any of you that have innovative things that you believe you are doing. I know this will directly address challenges that you face, whether it be workforce, whether it be the design of the system in CPS. But clearly, it's a chance to sort of go back to something I called out earlier about what else can you do. The days when we went to our local county, even to sort of problem solve and solve the county as our customer, those days are long gone by. And I think when we have individual families and individuals with needs, there's a great opportunity to bridge that gap. So I wanted to revisit this. This particular family member, on behalf of a group of family members, is really interested, of course, in meeting their needs for their loved ones and getting services. So you may have things right now. This may not be anything different than I said a month ago, but please reach out to us. I think we would like to assemble some providers that have an interest. We can provide some more information. I've not formally followed up in the inquiry to me and TPA. We intend to begin doing that, today and over the next couple of days. But again, opportunity for each of you to really continue to work through your entrepreneurial spirit and what you've done in developing services, developing your organizations, or being a leader in your own organization. So just a continued encouragement to continue to do that work. We know sometimes things become very weighty in terms of regulation, new requirements. We're in the midst of that very heavily right now. But we still want to do everything we can to connect individuals who need services, families who need services, with you as provider organizations to help bridge that gap and to help all of us. So with that, I think it's a good time to bring in my colleague, Eric Lindy, speaking of entrepreneurs. And I really wanted to recognize, if you can go next slide, Craig, what was the April 10th? It just hit me as I saw the slide. First of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. Good morning,
Yeah.
everybody.
So you were the architect behind this idea and plan. So in just a moment, I will let you speak to that and say anything you'd like to say. I just want to comment. Thank you for the invite. I attended. It was a great event. It was a great celebration of DSPs. Extremely well attended, great resources, a lot of fun, and truly was just a day of celebration. So thanks for doing it, and tell us anything you'd like to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those kind words. I don't know who all is on today. I'm sure there are people that attended. Uh, I won't take the credit for this. This actually, just to give you a little history, this started a couple of years ago, actually, maybe about a year and a half ago. Some of you may remember that the state Department of Labor put out some grant opportunities for innovative ways to support employees. And a team of folks here at Step by Step, led by our COO, Leslie Corey, gathered, and it was a cross section. We had some direct care folks involved internally, and they wrote a really nice proposal to the Department of Labor. Step by Step, we operate in 4 large areas in PA, really 5, but the central region is our smallest region. But we're in the northeast of PA, where I am now, in the Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Pocono region. That's our administrative offices. We're down in Lehigh Valley. We're also in the Philadelphia area with a couple offices there, and we're out in Pittsburgh. And by the way, go Steelers! I got my Steelers shirt on today. I'm very happy with the draft so far. But anyway, we didn't get it. They put the proposal in to do direct service professional support professional conferences in each of the regions that we operate in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, they did not receive the grant, and they were pretty disappointed, and I was as well. And I said to them at that time, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can do it ourselves, because it's really important, right? So we picked Pittsburgh. Even though I live here now, I'm a proud Western PA guy. And I know you all are so supportive of your direct support, as every provider agency is. But we really focused on Pittsburgh. And so I kind of took the lead from step by step just because I didn't want to burden, and I know Denise is on this call, our Vice President of Operations in Pittsburgh and Western Region, Western PA. Her team, they work really hard and they have a lot of responsibilities, and I didn't want to burden them with this, so I kind of took the lead. I will give a shout out to Marilyn McCall. A lot of you may know Marilyn from her time years ago at the county. She was my boots on the ground because I'm 4 hours away, and really did a nice job of organizing this through the Community Bridge Building Network that she has been supporting for years and years. So just to give you a little some numbers here. First of all, I want to say to all of you on this call, and I'm gonna shout out. I'm gonna take a few seconds to shout out our conference providers. We couldn't have done this without our conference sponsors. I'm sorry, with the sponsorship, and you all really stepped up. The final numbers aren't in yet for cost of this thing, but I'm guessing it's going to be around $40,000. And because we went all out. We had breakfast and lunch. We had a saxophone player bringing people, and we really wanted to make this a celebration about the DSPs. We said it over and over again. This was their day, and it was about them. And everything in this day was about them. The breakout sessions, which were wildly popular, were determined by a survey we did here at Step by Step of our, close to 1,000 DSPs. We asked them what would they want at a conference. We didn't want to do infectious disease or CPR first aid. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but those are things they get all the time through their organizations. And so we really tailored the breakouts around them, personal finance, for instance, and the art of play, and a lot of great things. But anyway, we had a saxophone player greeting people as they registered. We had great breakfast. The food was incredible, breakfast and lunch, all free for the DSPs. Sarah Innamorato, the Allegheny County executive, opened the conference. We had Al Condalucci. Everybody knows Al. He spoke. Guy Caruso, our two keynotes were national keynotes. Dr. Amy Hewitt, Patrick mentioned her earlier, that spent the next day at Emmaus, came in and talked to the direct care folks. Then we had a humorous motivational speaker who brought the house down and got a round of applause in the afternoon, Amy D. She came in from Minnesota and she was fantastic. We had the Carnegie Mellon University tartan bagpipers come through. There was about 20 of them in their kilts and played. It reminded me when I was at the county years ago and Chuck Peters left when he retired. He did the same thing, albeit not as big, with his son Stu. We had at lunch, we had a steel drum band playing for people while they ate lunch. And then in the afternoon, we had a post conference party at the Marriott across the street in the waterfront with a jazz quartet and some wine and cheese. And direct care showed up. They showed up and they stayed. So anyway, I'm guessing we spent about $40,000. 30,000 of that were the sponsors that kicked in. All of you on this call, many of you, some of you may not be on this call, but I want to run through them. The keynote sponsors were Keystone Human Services. Shout out to Chuck Sweeter and his team. Marikey stepped up. And then Step by Step. We were the keynotes sponsors, so we put up the most. And then we have Chartier Center, Emmaus Community of Pittsburgh, Twin Trees Incorporated, my first job. Paul, if you're on the call, and Becky, thank you, from Fayette County. Valley Community Services, GN and his team, CAP, the Conference of Allegheny Providers, RCPA, obviously TPA, and Patrick was essential for this. Beata Habilitation and Beata Nursing, Mainstay, Kim was the first to sign up, the first. McGuire Memorial, the BI Collaborative. Bob couldn't make it with his red jacket. For those of you that know, you know. Philadelphia Insurance Companies, J, which is Johnson Kendall Johnson, brokers out in Philadelphia that we use here at Step by Step. Supportive Concepts for Families, Achieva, Family Links, ARC Human Services, and Devereaux, and finally the ARC of Fayette County. So it was a regional congregation of providers that stepped up to support this event. So by the numbers, we had a total of 19 sponsors who I just read. We had 27 vendors. They also paid $100 for a table, and those tables were active all day. If you were a table vendor, you know the DSPs really appreciated the things that you shared with them at your tables. We had 26 volunteers, step by step. Thank you, Denise. I know you're on the call. I've already told your staff thank you, and you guys really helped out incredibly throughout the day. We had 16 presenters and special guests. Brenda Bukowski from Allegheny County, God love her, got up and did a great job presenting awards to the DSPs. Thank you to all the agencies that recommended DSPs for awards. I know they appreciate it. There were a lot of cool giveaways throughout the day. We had over 275 people attend the conference. Of that, about 230 were DSPs. 35 people.
Eric, I just want to say that was what was so impressive, really. And I think maybe we talked before, maybe you didn't even know, really. It's tough,
No.
right? We've been DSPs, and maybe you got to work that day. Maybe you're tired from working the night before. And that, I'll just comment from my perspective, was really impressive. And you've already said this. So many DSPs staying all day, just genuinely enjoying being near each other's company. So it really was a very fitting recognition. And I know we always say this, and again, it's great that you were able to step up again with the support of all the partners you've mentioned.
Well, I'm just it was, and I know my time's short here, and I just want to finish with a couple things and then throw it out to you to ride this wave, right? Yes, to speak to Patrick's point, I was concerned that we were going to have a lot of cancellations the day of because DSPs, they get pulled to sites. It could get tricky. The opposite happened. We had 35 people walk in unregistered that day. So I was really pleased with that. We had 38 different providers send staff to the conference. So anyway, for a first time and kind of pulling it together, I was ecstatic. And I think everybody that attended, we got nothing but positive feedback from everyone that attended. That all being said, I've talked to Patrick about this, and I want to propose this to the membership today. This is something that I would love for us to continue on. But those of you that know me, I'm a kind of a one and done guy. Like, all right, I'm tired now. I'm tired. I need help, and we need help to do this. And I think the TPA in the western part of the state would be the perfect vehicle to continue this on. And my recommendation, and it's just a recommendation, is that maybe a committee is formed, maybe a subgroup from the HR committee and TPA, but that's up to you all. If Patrick wants to do that as well, I would love to be on it, or we would certainly be a step by step would certainly commit to this, and look to do this again. Maybe not this October because it's coming. Before you know it, it's going to be Labor Day, but possibly starting next October, the following October of 26, for DSP week, we could really make this into something special. And it was special, but I mean, I could easily see 1,000 DSPs showing up for this event and really rocking it. As part of our DSP celebrations that we all do when the governor signs a proclamation in October for DSPs. So think about it. I'm willing to do whatever. I think we have a bit of a blueprint now. We left some money on the table. I'm going to be honest with you, sponsorships. We in looking back, we should have went after NADSP for a sponsorship. We should have went after like training platforms like Relias. There's some of you, I think, were a little hesitant. But now maybe you won't be, especially if when your DSPs come back and tell you how great it was. So anyway, just food for thought. I want to throw it out there. I want to thank everybody again it was a great day, a really, really fun day. Flew by. And I think that's it. I think
Well, thanks, Eric. Yeah, you definitely pulled it off. And as I said to you, even before the fact, before the event, I was intrigued by the concept. And since the event, and since we've spoken, I mentioned being out at the Isaac earlier in this meeting, and I chatted with Michael Donovan, and they do something in Philly. They do DSP recognition. They bring people in. So there's something going on in Philly. They've been doing that for a long time. It'd be great to have something here. We know our partners have a lot of presence in the Harrisburg area, but yeah, we certainly want to invite your consideration as members. And I think including DSPs to sort of say, as you've already done through your survey, Eric, that's something I'm definitely interested in exploring. And again, give us your feedback on that. Particularly if you were there, I saw some people in the chat talking about, yeah, they were there, great event. You sent your DSPs, they loved it. I'm not surprised. It was a great program. It was evident people appreciated being there. And thank you again, Eric, for giving it the liftoff. And as you said, we would not take it on. We've got our conference in July. Not looking to do this fall. That gives us plenty of time to ramp up and get a good committee, get good representation from people. As you said, I thought what was really beneficial was things that DSPs would want to have. So we have somebody asking for your contact info, Eric. If you're willing to give it, we can certainly get it to them, but I won't volunteer. But I don't know that you're probably easy to
I'd be
reach
happy
anyway.
to do that. I'll type it into the
Okay.
chat.
Once
when
you
we're
do that,
done.
I want to bring in your colleague, your VP of operations here in Pittsburgh area, because Dr. Hewitt was gracious to stay. And I want to thank and commend also Karen Jacobson, who could not be here today, for hosting us in person, and Dr. Amy Hewitt for an HR committee meeting. So you were there with me, Denise. So you get to share your perspectives. First of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for meeting the HR committee on that day.
Sure, Patrick. Thank you for asking me. I'm happy to sit here today and talk with you since Karen is unable to make it. The HR meeting, the day after the DSP conference was really a great meeting. It was an hour long, but the information that came out of that was very impactful. It was a jam-packed hour of great ideas. So I'm happy to share my takeaways from that conversation.
Yeah, please do. I'm interested. I mean, it was a great conversation. It kind of went all over. Again, Amy was keynote for the event the day before, so she had a DSP audience. Eric, of course, as you know, and I thought that was very different. And I thought similar content, but the message was a little different because the audience was different, being that it was providers. So interested in your takeaway.
Sure, yeah. So I think the first thing, just to piggyback on the conference thing, was she emphasized that we should continue our efforts to professionalize the DSP workforce by having things like DSP conferences that celebrate the work that they do and also provide them with new skill sets and new ways of thinking about their work. But also, not only that, but also simple things like sharing DSP specific professional publications. And one she mentioned in particular was Frontline Initiative. And I think the content of that, if I recall correctly, is directly from DSPs. And it's a professional publication that we would all have access to and could share with our workforce. So I thought that was something very simple that we could do as providers, almost immediately. But anything like that we can do to professionalize the workforce. And the other thing that she mentioned with regard to that, I think right around that time, Patrick, one of our state representatives had just recently said something about reducing qualifications for DSPs
Yes.
to not even needing a high school diploma. And she was very much opposed to that, as I think most of us would be, that is the opposite direction that we want to go in terms of professionalizing the workforce. So I thought that was an interesting comment that she made. So that was my
definitely tension.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, we know the workforce challenges, so we know in reality. And I go back to a time when college degree was a typical requirement for a DSP level position. So the realities of workforce. But yeah, Amy's points, like you never get wages increased if you go that direction. You have to professionalize it, right, Denise?
Exactly. Exactly. And the other thing, Patrick, with regard to funding and getting the support to invest in the workforce, Amy really suggested that we teach DSPs to tell their stories to legislators and funding bodies, because hearing from them directly will probably have a greater impact and a longer lasting impact than providers continuing to go on their behalf.
So as far as, I know we had some discussion about community colleges, some things that they were doing in New York State through some of the universities. So there's a lot more direct linkage between developmental program oversight and administration in New York State and NADSP than there is in Pennsylvania, although it's highly promoted. Most members, I think, would say, yeah, there's a really tight linkage in PA as well. But what were your takeaways on what Amy Hewitt had to say in terms of using maybe universities or community colleges to help the trainings for frontline supervisors or DSPs?
Right. I think that was that was probably the biggest takeaway, and that was the need to create a pipeline for the DSP workforce by partnering with community colleges or possibly state-related universities. And as you mentioned, she offered the state of New York and the partnership they've had with this the SUNY system up there to develop that sort of relationship, a reciprocal relationship. So it's not just the university offering the coursework and whatnot, but it's also what are providers offering? They're coming in as guest lecturers, they're offering paid internships, you know, they're hiring those individuals into their organization. So it's sort of what providers can offer the universities in a reciprocal way to help develop that workforce pipeline and keep it going.
Yeah, so it's always great to hear from Dr. Hewitt. She spent a couple of days in Pittsburgh. She's a very busy person, continues to do research, has another book coming out. It was just great to sit down and share some insights and hear what she had to say, I think, Denise. So it was a nice little session. I'm glad you could be there. I was, again, grateful to Emmaus, all the staff at Emmaus and Karen for really pulling that off. That was a big help on that particular day. So any final thoughts, Denise, before we move on to our next topic?
No, Patrick, I think that covered the main things I wanted to get across from that meeting.
Great.
And I know your time is short here, so I won't take any more, but happy to continue the conversation.
I'll take some time, Denise. I do want to say thanks to Amy. You know, she came in, did the first thing in the morning, and I kind of expected her to take off, and she did. She stayed the whole day.
Yeah.
And she actually came to the her and Guy came to the evening reception at the Marriott. So she really and she was glowing about the conference. So that was a nice affirmation from her. Thanks.
Yeah, it sure was. I remember her saying during the keynote, to be able to spend a day with DSPs, that's kind of her thing for sure. And she did truly enjoy it, and she did hang out all day. Glad to hear she hung out into the evening. Glad she hung out to the next day to do the session with our members as well. So Eric, thank you. Denise, thank you very much. Appreciate you updating our members on everything that occurred during that week. Thanks again. Okay, I next want to invite in and introduce our next topic, Josh Royston from Marsh McLennan Agency, Graham Company. I want to briefly preface things, Josh. I know we've been working at this for a while, and I'll let you introduce your team in a moment. But for just the TPA members, you may have missed this comment earlier. We have done some things in the past, going back to our purchasing edge, that was really engaged in the purchase of insurance on a group platform, health insurance. We've gone through some iterations of things that I would say have not been successful. So I was really interested in, broadly speaking, what solutions can TPA bring to each of you as member organizations that provide a true benefit. So we have been working with Josh and his team over the last couple of months to really put us in a position to introduce something to you today. And I think it's very well constructed, and I think there's a lot of detail already invested in it. And the next step is to really get your feedback from it and ask your feedback and information about if you would like to take next steps. So I won't steal the thunder from our presenters here today. I want them to get into this, but I do want you to know that the intent here is to really deliver something meaningful that could provide both direct benefit to you in terms of improved service and the possibility for some significant savings for something that you may already be doing. So we'll challenge you with a couple of questions at the end of this. But Josh and your team, thank you very much for being here today. Josh, as I said, I'll let you introduce everyone, but thank you and welcome.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it. And thank you, Craig, as well. It's been nice to get to learn more about TPA, and just a great organization. So thank you. Want to start out, and we have nice pictures of us on the next slide here. But my name is Josh Royston, and today with me is Blair Garland and Mark Leone. We work with the Graham Company, that is a subsidiary of Marsh McLennan Agency, and we are an insurance brokerage firm that specializes in captive insurance programs. You can tell from our area codes here, we have the state covered. I'm Pennsylvania based, where Blair and Mark are Philadelphia based. So have Pennsylvania and in between. And so I will just introduce Blair Garland to you. Blair is our captive practice leader. And she's going to speak a little bit to everybody today about how captives operate, what is a captive insurance program, and what would be the benefits of doing that for TPA. And Mark Leone joins us as well. He's a vice president with MMA, and he's going to bring a kind of a detailed perspective on developing captives. And Mark is an attorney as well, and so kind of the view of starting that as well. And then myself, my career has been spent in health and human services, and I am a producer here at Graham. And so again, thank you, Patrick, for having us. And I'm going to ask Mark to talk a little bit about the proposed TPA captive liability program that starts on the next slide.
Great, thanks, Josh, and guys, really appreciate the opportunity to get in front of this group. Hopefully, we'll have the chance as a team here to meet some more of the members in person as well, but we appreciate the opportunity. And guys, really for today, as Josh alluded to, what we wanted to talk about, in a bit of a condensed period of time here is just the idea of exploring and putting together a TPA captive, managed and brokered by our organization. And the idea here really is at a high level, and Blair will touch on some of this, but going through some of the concepts surrounding, what is a group captive, and then maybe more importantly, how it can be leveraged to help the members of TPA. Now, some on this call might be very familiar with captives. Some might have captives. For some, it might be a new concept. So, our time's limited today, but really, our goal here is to educate the membership as best we can on some of the different opportunities and structures that are out there and available, to effectively transfer risk. And then also, in the future, if there is some interest to explore and maybe provide some more detailed information for members that might be interested in this idea or this concept of having a group captive for TPA. The next paragraph there really is just, why TPA, right? With a group captive, any number of groups of organizations can perform or can form a captive. So why TPA? You as members of TPA are already familiar, with the benefits and the advocacy provided by the association to its members. But when we look at the group, there's a number of, data points that really already make up the members that kind of make it ripe for at least exploring the idea of a group captive. For one, some of the insurance-related exposures that you all are already kind of living on a day-to-day basis, the core lines that are typically involved in a captive are those like general liability, professional liability, workers' compensation. Those are already kind of core exposure areas for your group. So it really kind of lends itself nicely to the captive structure. And then kind of the key benefits of a captive, some can really come from the familiarity that is already built into this membership, right? You've got like-minded groups operating kind of in similar fields, geographically similar representation exposures, similar risk exposures. So all of that kind of lends itself nicely to the concept of a group captive, which I think makes sense for having this discussion now. And then finally, just the last paragraph, who are we? Josh kind of already touched on that. I think the key distinction here is, Graham Company's been around for 65 years. We were founded in Philadelphia. We were the largest privately held brokerage in the state of Pennsylvania. We now operate as a division within Marsh, which is the largest brokerage and risk management consulting firm in the world. But we, as a part of that organization, we focus exclusively on organizations that have complex operations and exposures, and about 40 to 45% of our client base is in that health and human services arena for obvious reasons, because it fits nicely into that complexity area. And then Blair will touch on kind of our expertise in working with captives and group captives, which is kind of a core part of our focus area. So anyway, we're excited to be here. We look forward to building the relationship and really being a resource for the membership. So I will turn it over to Blair here and the next slide.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. So captives, they've been around for several dozens of years, and there's been growing interest in captives. In fact, E&Y's latest global insurance report puts the market roughly at 25% of the insurance market is in some type of captive. And there's been growing demand because the insurance industry has been frustrating, and rates have gone up, and premiums and costs have gone up, and organizations like those that are part of TPA have been wondering, is there a better way or a better program structure to go into that better supports what you're doing to support your communities, but also where you get some of your reward for good performance. So what is a captive? Well, there's several different types of captives, like single parent captives and rental captives. What we're talking about today is a group captive, and that would be where members of TPA would come together to form their own insurance company. And part of that is we would help you set that up. We would help manage that. We would help you run it. So you're not expected to run an insurance company as part of your normal day-to-day operations. We would help you do that. And like Mark said earlier, historically captives have been used to solve general liability and professional liability challenges, as well as workers' compensation, as those two lines of coverages really are likely your most expensive insurance line items. And if we go to the next slide, we'll talk about, okay, why are organizations doing this? So number one is the ability to reduce your overall insurance costs. We see on average, it's about 10 to 30%. And how is that done? Number one is you're now being pooled with a better risk of insureds versus the entire nation of those operating in the same space as you. So you're able to get better pricing because you're banded together with best-in-class operators. But then also you're able to get some of the return of premium dollars with your good claims performance or your loss performance. You're able to get some of that money back that historically just insurance companies got to see that reward. So again, more dollars back in your pocket, less expenses, which better goes to help you support your communities and your initiatives that you're working on individually as an organization, which especially now with everything with the federal and state budgets, this is an area of opportunity that you could have to control one of those expense items so that you can better support the good work that you're all doing. And as part of having better insureds that are together, a better group of individuals and organizations, that gives you more control over your insurance program in terms of what coverages that you're getting from your insurance program. So you get to have more control. You have more of the say, you have the seat at the table. So more coverage means your organization is better protected. And then also as part of this too is, since a lot of this will come down to your claims performance and your good loss activity, we have a dedicated claims team to help support you in making sure those claims are prevented where they can be. And if you do have claims, let's mitigate them so that the dollar impact is small, so you can get the most reward out of this program and get the most premium dollars back and keep your costs as low as possible.
Josh, you're on mute.
Josh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Blair. So we're going to talk a little bit about with the captives themselves, what are the lines of coverage, and as we discuss the different lines that are in this, and one of the questions that often comes up is that people will ask, well, we're interested in a captive, but we are using an insurance broker to place our insurance currently, can we still use them? And the answer is yes. What we look at with the captive lines of coverage is it can be one of your lines of coverage, or it could be multiple lines of coverage. And it depends on your organization and what's going to be most beneficial for you to do. And so, like Blair had talked about, general liability and professional liability coverage and workers' compensation are often two lines that we see within captive programs, but it is, we can look at different lines and moving those into the captive. When we talk about the lines of coverage itself, we are talking about your business insurance. So business insurance, also referred to as property and casualty insurance as well. So you'll see on this slide there are examples of the different lines of coverage, but these are purely examples of that, and we can look at different lines moving into there as well. Part of the advantage that we see for this is that when we're working with a group like yourselves, there is a power in numbers. And so as you guys look at as a group and looking at potentially the captive, what we see is an increase of your coverage, so getting better coverage under a captive. And then with that, we see a savings that is available for you as well. And so the idea is, again, the power in numbers, and the Provider Alliance has that power to do that. And it's kind of what led us to this point in our conversations with Patrick and Craig. And the next slide here just has some has contact information. Certainly, if I can also put it in the chat as well. But if there are any questions, we're happy to answer that and give you some more information about the captive.
So Josh, Mark, Blair, thank you very much for the presentation. So let me follow up, Josh, and really any of you that want to kind of chime in and answer. So this only works if we get to sufficient numbers. So we have to be able to manage risk, I should say, the program itself does. So based on what you've heard, Craig, I think it's okay if we just go ahead and open the poll while I talk about this a little bit. So I'll start with you, Josh. What would you need to have, do you believe, in terms of people with showing an interest? You know, what we're going to ask you as members in the audience is, if you're interested in this, are you interested in having a dedicated meeting to learn more about this, if this interests you? And then this will ultimately involve a decision around selection of broker of record. And we know that in our work, a lot of times you are leaning on your partners to support things. Your golf outing, if you have something, or fundraisers, or make contributions, or do other things for your organization. So we want to be very direct, because if this is something that can provide a solution to you as a member, then we absolutely want to act on it. But it will require enough people to step up to make this viable. So I'll stop talking there, Josh, and kind of give it to you, because I don't want to misinform people on details. What are your thoughts on those exact points? Well, really, we'll let the members answer the questions, but just in terms of size, volume, and that sort of thing, please.
Yeah, absolutely. To start, the captive becomes more powerful, and you see more savings with the larger the group grows. But to start, we initially would need probably about 5 or 6 organizations to look at 1 to 2 lines of coverage, and that should give us enough premium to start the growth of the captive. And then from there, you start, again, it can start to grow. And we would work with each individual organization. So we want to work with people as a group, but we also understand everybody has different schedules of insurance, different setups, and different lines. So we would work individually with you to help figure out what makes the most sense, and how do you join the captive as well.
Okay, well, I see so far we have 18 people that have signed up that they would be interested in learning more. So we will certainly make sure we reach out individually to those of you that have expressed an interest, but we'll open this up for people maybe who cannot attend today. But that sounds like a good start in terms of having a follow-up meeting. Likewise, 18, maybe it's the same 18 that express would not be an issue. if a broker relationship needed to change. And we would provide more detail, correct, Josh? At the subsequent meeting, we could devote something knowing that we had people that really wanted to take a deeper dive into this. So if we got into even the lines of insurance or maybe where to begin with this, I'll ask you, but I'll sort of make that commitment. That would be the intention, that we would take a deeper dive.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We would provide some more detailed information about what the actual structure of the captive could look like initially, where it could grow to, and then of course, we would have an open Q&A to answer questions as the group, and we can answer individual questions as well.
Okay. Okay, Craig, any questions that we have on this topic? Or any final thoughts, Josh, Mark, or Blair, that you wanted to add?
I don't see any questions in the Q&A.
Okay, well, thank you for those who participated in the poll. So we've made note of that. I think that's a good response. I'm encouraged to see that level of interest, Josh, Mark, and Blair. So we will certainly follow up with you to coordinate that meeting with those interested parties and other TPA members who might be interested as we promote that meeting. So thank you, Josh, Blair, Mark. Appreciate all the information shared. Appreciate your willingness to step up and develop a solution for TPA members and for TPA. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you all. Okay, and looks like we've gotten to almost the bottom of the hour. So I think the deck might be down, so I'll just say the thank you to everyone out there. Craig, thank you. Thanks to all our guests today. Thank all of you for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll keep everybody informed, and we will see everyone next time. Thank you very much.